Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video we are continuing work on the 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic, and as you can see we've turned it around because today we're going to be working on the attachment lift, which we will be rebuilding and hopefully fitting it all up. Now, before we get started today with rebuilding the attachment lift system, I would just like to give a bit of information for anyone following this process on a 1961 or 62 Rideamatic. Now, when it comes to rebuilding the rear end on this 1960, we can put on the attachment lift mechanism and then put the toolbox and fenders on afterwards because of that gap in the toolbox under there. Sorry for any background noise. There's been plenty of RAF planes going over recently, but yeah, we can put this on afterwards because this bar goes through this section easily and we can just bolt that on top and it doesn't interfere. Whereas we have the 1962 Rideamatic, or one of them, sitting next to the bench here today, and you can see that lift bar goes through this kind of toolbox and fender mounting bracket, which means this bracket and the toolbox area and everything needs to be bolted on first. Then you kind of have to stick the bar through from the front and it's a bit more awkward. So it's much easier to do on a 1960, but worth keeping that in mind if you're following this rebuild and mechanical restoration series to help you with your own project. And another thing to remember, if you've got a 61 or 62 that isn't a feature on the earlier Rideamatics, is there should be a bolt hole about there somewhere on this lift bar, which you then attach a spring to. The other end of that connects to part of the chassis, and then you effectively have a spring assist on your lift lever, which is very convenient if you're lifting a heavy attachment or something, but less convenient if you accidentally press the button when your head's near it and you get clobbered, which both me and Dad have done accidentally in the past. The first thing we need to do before we can install any of these parts is take them apart into the individual components and give them a proper clean, because this will be the last time that they're all apart and they've all got plenty of kind of crusty rust, and still some of them have some bits of oil and stuff on them. We'll take these apart as much as necessary. Most of the cleaning we'll do off camera because it's quite a long process, but we will also talk you through what we're kind of doing to each of these parts to bring up as much original paint and protect where there isn't any paint anymore. We're going to start with the lift lever, which is kind of two parts, the lever itself and then this part, which has all the notches that the lever rod goes into. And we have just rewatched part of our strip down video earlier in the project when we took this off the tractor, which reminded us that we've got one bolt of the wrong size that we need to replace if we've got a replacement for it, and that when we were taking it apart, the lift lever wouldn't come out while this was bolted on. So for reassembly, we're going to have to put the lift lever through the slot in the chassis first, then push this up from the bottom, bolt it on, and then bolt the two together. But first we're going to be cleaning these parts, as we said before, and to clean them we need to disassemble them fully. So first I need to take this split pin out of here, which is being a bit stubborn. There we are, that's that off, and I'll just get that washer too. There we are. Put those in a magnetic dish, which I'd highly recommend for anyone doing tractor projects so you don't lose parts. Next thing to do is to unwind the button part here, which is threaded onto the rod, and then behind it is the spring for the lift lever. So once this comes off, there should be a spring to come out of this end as well. There we are, that's the button part. If I tip this up, hopefully the spring will come out. There we are, and there's some other muck in there too. See if we've got any more of that. There we don't. But now I can take this rod part out as well. There we are. And that is as separated as the lift lever gets. So we're now going to clean these parts up a bit and come back to you. Sometime later now, and we've done all the cleaning we needed, and it took a bit longer than expected because we have just gone looking for a few parts. Now we'll start over here. Obviously we needed to replace that odd bolt, and originally we ordered a bag of new ones. However, we did just have a look at these. Where these will be mounting is here on the chassis, and they stand out quite a bit from the kind of patinaed paint look on there, having a shiny new bolt on there. So we weren't too keen on using these, so we did just have a quick look through our random bolt drawer that we have, and luckily we actually found a bolt of the perfect size, and it's nowhere near as shiny. It's not got any green paint or anything on there, but if I put it in the chassis here, you can tell that just blends in so much more and is much more suitable to the look we're trying to get on this tractor. So that's the bolt we're going to be using. We'll keep those new bolts for whatever other Rideamatic restorations we do in future. Now both bolts are getting new spring washers on them. I'm going to reuse the old nut for that one, and obviously that one needs a new nut to go with it. So that's those bolts sorted. Then we have two more bolts here. These big 1/2 inch UNC by 1 1/4 inch bolts. Now these were fully threaded, and as you can see, over the last 60 years the parts near the head have worn down to be effectively partially threaded. Now one of these goes through here, then threads into the lift lever, which is why that's worn down, and then the other one goes through the end of the lift bar, then screws into the lift lever as well, which again is why that's worn down. Now we've just tried to look online for replacements of these, and you can't actually buy 1 1/4 inch long bolts that are partially threaded with the shoulder on them, which would be ideal for this job. We could get fully threaded ones like Bolens did originally, but that's just going to cause more damage in there. You can actually see kind of the thread marks in there where the thread has turned. I'm not sure how well you can see that on camera, but you can definitely see it in person, how that's damaged it. Sorry. And the other alternative is to get a longer bolt like this and try and cut it down. However, the issue with that is that we've just tried measuring this up. If you put that through here, that shoulder is marginally too long, so that would cause more movement, and as you can see there's still a bit of wear in there even when you do that. So in future we might have to come up with some engineering solution to do that. However, to progress forward today, we're going to use the old bolts because this whole area is pretty accessible on the tractor for us to change this in future, and it gives us longer to think about what would be the best solution. So with that kind of decided how we're moving forward, it's time to rebuild this lift lever again. Now all of these parts are oiled up a bit so that they won't rust when we put them back together. So the rod goes in first, and we won't put the split pin and the washer or anything on the other end of that yet, because when it comes to putting these two parts together, this will have to come out so that it can lock into this part. Now, having done that, I will turn that over, put a spring in there, like so, and now we've got our button part, and I will just Can't fully remember if I need to push the spring down or not to get this onto the thread. Might be a bit difficult, but I don't know. Difficult enough to get some threads started when you can see them, let alone trying to imagine where they are, but there we are, that is on there now. And that is fully tightened up. Works perfectly as it should do. And now we can take these parts over to the tractor and start getting them fitted up. Installing the lift lever is going to be quite difficult, especially on my own here, so I'll see how far I can get before I need to call in assistance. Might be slightly awkward, but as we've said before, the lift lever has to go in first. However, I'm not actually going to put this in that far. I'm just going to put it in so that that pin part that's usually in the way is in there. Then this bracket is fixed on from the bottom, so I just kind of lift this up, push this up next to it and try and get those bolts lined up. There we are. I can then wedge the two together by letting go of the lift lever there, which is a handy feature. Don't think they intended it, but it works. There we are. That's our two bolts on there. And I will probably need assistance to go any further, but we'll come back to you in a minute in a bit of an easier place. We've now fully bolted this bracket up and oiled the contact surface there. So now is a point where we put the lever over like this. Just got to put that through there like that. There we go. Then put the bolt through at the back, which is slightly more difficult. Say slightly, it's quite difficult. There we are. Oh, thought I had it, I nearly had it. This can be very difficult to do, I think, or to hold and tighten up myself, so I'll probably have to call for backup on this one from Dad. So we'll cut now and come back to you in a second, hopefully with this bolted up. We got that bolt in now, then use the opportunity to put the split pin in and the washer, and now that works nice and smoothly, so we're happy with this lift lever. And we've cleared the decks on this bench now and put the rear hitch assembly and lift bar all on here. What we need to do now is separate this into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts and clean all of them up individually so that we can reassemble them and put them back on the tractor. There's no mechanical work to do, just bring up as much original paint as possible. It's the next day now because we kind of ran out of time with some of our cleaning bits. Everything's cleaned up relatively nicely, and as part of our cleaning, if there's any fixings that we're reusing, like nuts and bolts, we run a tap through the nuts to clean out the threads on them, and a dye through the threads on the bolts to clean those out as well. Just makes them nicer to reuse and restores them to a decent condition. However, the only issue we have found is with this back plate for the chassis, which appears to be badly bent. If I kind of hold it flat, you might be able to see at the bolt holes that the metal's kind of been pulled upwards. And if I put this on the table, you can see not straight in the slightest. Now, what I was saying about the bolt holes is easier seen when I put this on there. You can see there's a huge gap behind it. There we are. And that kind of rocks on there too, showing the centre is high where the bolt holes are. So obviously we need to flatten that out and see if we can get that to sit straight too. So I think our first port of call will be trying to kind of blacksmith it a bit, but failing that we might have to move on to getting the press out and see if we can squeeze it back to shape. We've now straightened up this bracket as best as possible and put 2 new bolts on there. To straighten it up, we used our anvil, which could do with a bit of a clean up, but it's pretty dirty because it came out of the same barn that the 1960 was buried in when we bought both of them together along with some other stuff. But that's a different day's discussion. With that all put together again, we can now take some parts over to the tractor. So if I just carry these bits over, it's a bit of a balancing act when it comes to putting all this rear linkage on the Rideamatic. I'll just put that there for now. Now, we're going to put things with kind of the most paint facing outwards and upwards, because you don't look at a tractor from below very often. So this goes inside the chassis kind of box section part there, which that might need those bent out a tiny bit to get that in there, but that's kind of the usual. Then these go on either side here, like so. 2 bolts, the bottom 2 bolts on each side go through the side panel of that. And then, as you can see, there's another bolt above there and there, which is what the 2 bolts here go through, and then that kind of bolts on top there. It is a bit of a juggling act, so it's going to require both of us. So what we're now going to do is cut here. We're going to get these 4 parts bolted onto the rear here, and then the last thing to go on will be the lift bar, which we can do on camera with you, and then we can give it a test. The brackets are all on now, and we put new washers and spring washers on the bolts here, but you can't see them because we've moved them so that the bolts face inwards rather than having the nuts on the outside, which we believed to be wrong, but that was how this tractor was when we started this project. So we turned them around so it's the bolt heads on the outside, which we think is much better, and it means it kind of hides the new shiny washers and spring washers and stuff like that. But the last piece of this puzzle is to put this lift bar on, which I'm going to attach the front end first. So it's kind of there under here. I'm going to use that bolt as just a place to rest the lever. There we are. So we've got this bolt goes through the lever, then threads into the, or it goes straight through the bar, then threads into the lift lever. Then once this is all the way done up, we then have a washer and a nut, which this didn't have on it when we started this project, but was actually one of the first things that we said, yeah, that's something that we need to order in preparation for reassembly. And that is now almost on. Before I tighten that up fully, I'll go to the back and do this part. So kind of push that back to there. All of this stuff on as one. There we are. And now I just need to tighten all of these up fully, and we'll come back to you in a minute with these all fully done up and fitted. We have everything tightened up now, and we've sprayed the lift bar with the kind of rust prevention oil that makes everything nice and shiny that we've been trying to use on everything on this tractor so far to give a proper oily rag finish. Now, what we would do is put on the original tow hitch from this tractor. However, obviously, this isn't properly cleaned up at the moment, and there's a reason for that. When we first got this tractor, we actually stole this tow hitch to go on our 1962 Rideamatic because that didn't have one, and it didn't have one of these back chassis plates, so we got one from America, and it was this style rather than the actual 62 style one, so we nicked this tow hitch to fit on that. Obviously, this is going to go back on this tractor because we want to make it original. So between now and whenever we finish this tractor, we need to find some alternate solution for the 62 Rideamatic so we can put this back on here, but that won't happen at the moment. But now with this all linked up, let's give a bit of a demonstration. So that's in the maximum, actually no, that's the maximum lift point. then we would lower it all the way down to here. If I pretend that there's weight of an attachment on there, that would pull that down there, and that is low enough to have a plough in the ground or a tiller down, and then this kind of movement allows for it to float a bit as you're using the attachment and lift it back up again. So we are happy with all of that, and it's another few steps forward on the 1960 Rideamatic project. But that is it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.